Okay, this is great. You know, we have half a packed house, and that's terrific. I want to welcome everybody to Rincon Valley Citizens for Democracy. Before we begin, Rincon Valley Citizens for Democracy is a group of citizens in the Rincon Valley, Arizona area working together to support and preserve our democracy. The views and opinions expressed are those of the individual speakers and may not always reflect the official policy or position of RVCD. Content presented is for educational and informational purposes. Rincon Valley Citizens for Democracy is not affiliated with, supported by, or endorsed by the Arizona Senior Academy. Though Rincon Valley Citizens for Democracy is nonpartisan, we support and may advocate for issues and individuals promoting democracy. We're not neutral. Today's program includes 3 engaging speakers highlighting current immigration issues. We'd like you to hold questions to the end, and after the Q&A, you'll have a chance to share refreshments and conversation with each of our speakers. First up is Don Driscoll. Many of you know him as he is a resident in Academy Village. He's been a strong supporter of humanitarian work with immigrants at our borders and has worked with several groups, including Samaritans and Justice for All. He will introduce some of his own work, and Myra Silverman and Margo Cowan, I will get that right sometime, and Justice for All. Let's please welcome Don.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you to the Rincon Valley Citizens for Democracy for hosting this event. And welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see a good turnout. Before I introduce Myra, I want to talk to you about how you can volunteer to support your immigrant friends and neighbors that are feeling isolated and threatened right now. Tucson has a long history of welcoming people from other countries fleeing persecution and violence in a pursuit of a better life. There is a list of humanitarian aid groups and human rights organizations on the table in the lobby. This is a short list of 9 organizations that I'm familiar with, but there are many more doing this kind of work. If you have questions about volunteering, please talk to me, Margo, or Myra after the presentation. Myra Silverman arrived in Tucson from Chicago in 1972 to attend the University of Arizona. She fell in love with the mountains and weather and never returned north. She first met Margo in 1979 when they were both in graduate school. After a successful career with her own corporate recruiting business, she retired to spend more time with family. She teamed up with Margo again in 2012 to assist people in getting their driver's licenses and work permits through the DACA program. She has worked with nonprofit social justice organizations her entire life, and for the past 4 years has been working hard on the Justice for All ballot initiative. Her dedication to helping others is inspiring. Please welcome Myra Silverman.
Can you hear me okay? Or should I put it down a little bit? Okay. Anyway, I'm going to introduce Margo because she's the brains and energy behind this. Margo has a long history of social justice work as well, probably over 50. She worked with Cesar Chavez. She worked with Dolores Huerta, so she goes way back. I'm just going to talk about what she's done in the last probably 13 or more years. She started a pro bono legal clinic for people going through immigration court for many different types of relief. So it could have been naturalization, it could have been DACA, it could have been adjustment of status, and it's all volunteer lawyers at Pueblo High School on Thursday nights, which is on South 12th Avenue near Ajo. So since then, her office also helps people for free to get their paperwork correct, get tons of help for any kind of immigration situation they're going through. So what she started in 2020 was this initiative, and it's to get a lawyer for people going through immigration court or deportation proceedings. They do not get assigned a lawyer now. So they go alone before a judge, and if they go alone, they lose their case. A study was done a few years ago that showed when they do not have a lawyer with them, they win their case 3% of the time. When they have a lawyer with them, they win 63% of the time. So it's huge. So we need 60,000 signatures to get this on the ballot for next year, July 1 of 2026. And sounds excessive, but we really want to get 80,000 because Pima County elections will probably throw out some of the signatures, so we want a good buffer. So I'm just going to introduce Margo because she is the powerhouse between everything that happens. And just please sign our petition, we're out there, or take a petition just to get 15 signatures from friends, family, coworkers, anybody. I've even asked people at a car wash. So they signed. All right, Margo Cowan.
Let me start by saying that was a paid political announcement. You know, it's a great honor to be here with you this afternoon. And I think what I'd like to do is just share some information about where we are in terms of immigration and where the undocumented community is in our community here in Tucson, and the kind of things that we're doing to try and make life a little bit more bearable during this moment. Just sort of as a backdrop, it's interesting that our immigration laws really don't have any consistency. The first immigration law was passed back in the 1880s, and of course that was the Chinese Exclusion Act. And after Chinese workers built the railroads, then they decided they should all be deported. That was very nice. Then in 1924 was the first time that there was a code. And the code was really limited to folks from Europe, which is interesting because very few people in the 1920s were coming to the United States from Europe. Most of the people obviously were coming from Mexico and coming up and working and going back and forth. I mean, I was general counsel at the Tohono Nation for 10 years, and that border is still the same. O'odham people who are federally recognized American Indians, but Mexican citizens not born in the United States come and go every day. And it's been basically open. I know Myra thinks I don't talk loud enough. Can you all hear me? Yeah, you see? People, that's just a natural pathway that people from northern Sonora come up and down and have done that forever. So the first legislative scheme was written in 1924, and it set up quotas, but it set up quotas for European sending countries, not for Mexico, Central America, or South America. And that was just sort of the beginning of the structure of the law. And unfortunately, that thread has been with us now since the beginning. There was a legalization, though, in 1924, and it was anybody who was in the United States on a certain day in 1924 was made a US citizen. Not a lawful permanent resident, but from no status to being a US citizen. And then again, the same phenomena in 1948, recognizing the work that people contributed during the war. And then again in 72, and in 72, it was really on the coattails sort of the civil rights movements of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. And then the last legalization was in 1986, and that was an amnesty. In other words, to forgive people for their sins, for coming to the United States to do the jobs that American citizens won't do. But we called it amnesty. So fast forward to today, there has not been any other kind of legislative action. You know, the DACA program, sometimes folks say, well, but there was DACA. That was a presidential order. That wasn't a legislative act. That was a presidential order that occurred under President Obama. And thousands of young people benefited. In our clinic, which has been around now for about 20 years, we did 7,000 DACAs. And what's interesting is, you know, those young people now have grown up. Many of them have married, many of them married citizens. We went ahead and did the legalization, making them lawful permanent residents because they had married US citizens. And then we made them naturalized US citizens when they'd been married as lawful permanent residents for, I think it was 3 years. So that's an interesting piece of the puzzle. The thing that I always find just interesting, but also really crazy, is there's no, what one might say, a reasonable path of legislative development about this subject. 1 minute it's here, then it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. We love you, we hate you, we're this and that. I mean, just, it has never been dealt with, I think, in the appropriate legislative manner, recognizing the contribution that people without documents make to our economy and what they carry on their backs. And the other flip side of the racism, which is inherent in the way that they're treated in almost every aspect of life. So that fast forwards us to where we are now. I really can't remember a time that has been, even the Nixon years. I mean, I really can't. I was indicted, myself and a nun and 2 other women, on a 52-count federal felony indictment in the Nixon years. And the allegations, you can tell they lost. This poor nun had come from Guatemala, and she's probably, at that time, she was probably my age now, and she wore her gown down to the floor. And when we all got hauled off to jail to be you know, fingerprinted and pictures taken and all that, she just kept looking at me like, you know, reading her mind. I came to volunteer, I didn't come for this. But even in the Nixon years, we didn't see this kind of overt, open racism and actions to go with that racism, implementation of that racist hate. We didn't see that. But today we see it. And it's open, and it's bald, and it's just horrific. I want to share with you just a couple of examples of clients of ours right here in Tucson that have happened within the last few weeks. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, we got a call from a neighbor who said ICE had come to the woman's house that lived across the street. They broke down the door and they brought out the grandmother, who was in a wheelchair, was wheelchair bound. And they took her and put her in the van. And the daughter, who I think was just under 40, grabbed the wheelchair and started screaming, no, don't take my mom, don't take my mom. Nobody asked for papers. Nobody asked for any identification. This just happened. And these people were not in removal proceedings, ever. And so they took the mom, the young woman, late 30s, they threw her on the sidewalk, and they broke her facial bones and her collarbones. And then they picked her up and threw her in one of the paddy wagons. They took her to University Hospital. She was only there about an hour and a half. She and her mom, were immediately deported. And nobody has gotten in touch with me to tell me what happened to them or if they got to a destination safely. They left the 8-year-old daughter of the mom standing on the sidewalk. They left an 8-year-old baby standing on the sidewalk. That baby will never forget what she saw that day. I have no idea. One of the neighbors took in the child. I have no idea whether or not that child has had any communication with her mother or her grandmother. That's happening in our town. Our town, this is our town. This is not our value, but it's happening in our town. There was another case of some guys, ICE officers, that somehow got Tucson electric power jackets and put them on over their ICE uniforms and pounded on the door. And thank goodness, the woman across the street somehow came, she was a precinct committee woman, and she came running out and she started hollering at them because I guess she saw them cover up their uniforms with the Tucson electric power jackets. And so they backed off, and they left. And the father of that family, who was a client of ours and not documented, immediately was able to escape. But can you imagine that? I mean, remember, this is our town. These things shouldn't be happening around us, you know? Throwing mothers on the sidewalk face first and taking the grandma away in a wheelchair and leaving the baby. And then hiding up in a TEP jacket so you can, that shouldn't be happening in our town. And I could go on. But I want to hear what your questions are and that kind of thing. What we have initiated most recently is a campaign because our clinic, Keep Tucson Together, goodness, over the years, we've been able to regularize status for just thousands of people, and all of our stuff is free. And I believe very strongly that one should share knowledge, not sell it. I think it's kind of dirty if you try and say, well, I can tell you how to stay here, but you got to give me some money. Somehow that doesn't settle with me. So everything we do is because we want to give community the information that they need so they can, through concentric circles, share it with the people they work with, the people who live next door, the people that goes to the church, everybody they know, so that the community is informed and doesn't feel like they have no rights, they have no voice. They just have to lay down and take it. That's not right. So our clinic does everything we can to share knowledge. And we always say to people that okay, you come and you have a situation, you tell me what it is, I tell you what we can do, I tell you the path, but then I want you to tell all the guys you work with what it is, so that everybody else that has that same presentation say, wow, I checked this out. Maybe I can do this or that and the other, because when you feel like community feels like they were animals being run after by people with a gun, just waiting to catch them. It doesn't matter if you leave babies at home, it doesn't matter where you get caught, it doesn't matter. So the power of knowledge, and you all, I don't think we would be in this village if you all didn't understand the power of knowledge. The power of knowledge is tremendous to share with people so that they share their concentric circles, whether you work in construction, but you tell all the guys that are working on your shift, guess what? Here's this, that, and the other. Here's what you do if they come. Now, one thing in this moment, the enforcer agencies they have no limits, and they're not abiding by current statute. So it's a little bit hard for me, and I've done this forever, to say, I want you to share with everybody you work with, go to church with, go to social club, play soccer with, everything I'm going to tell you, I want you to tell you all your brothers and all your sisters, I want you to tell them all. because we can't expect everybody to come to clinics, but the very best people that share knowledge are your best friends, and your neighbors. The problem with that today is the people that are enforcing immigration laws are ignoring them. They're ignoring the rights of the people. They're not saying, I must interview you, what's your status in the United States? The questions that one could ask legitimately and legally, and then say, well, I'm sorry, you overstayed your permit. You're going to have to go see a judge, and here's the paper. All very polite and very legal. No, that's not happening. That's not happening. You're coming with me, blah, 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 blah. That's what's happening. Because part of the strategy of the moment is scare the community to death. And maybe they'll leave on their own. Maybe they'll take their kids somewhere else because they don't want their kids to see this. Is to terrorize. And I'm telling you, I've done this forever. I've never seen this level of liquid hate and purposeful hate. It's a strategy. It's not just, well, one bad guy went off on somebody, he had a bad day, he'd been working all night, whatever it is. No, this is a strategy. A strategy. So this moment is horrific. So what do we do? Well, we need to share this with community, which is what we do all the time. All of the people who have some relief, we file that relief and we explain to them, I can't tell you, you absolutely qualify for the relief. I can't tell you if it's going to be denied. I can't tell you if they're going to use this to come get you. I can't tell you what the outcome is. I can tell you under the law, you are eligible for this relief. It's your call. Do you want to wait a couple of years until there's a different regime, or do you want to take a chance? And the other piece of the puzzle, and I would never say that before. I would never say that. I'd say, yeah, let's get that filed and get you in a safe position, And I can't say that because I can't guarantee that the laws that are on the books will be respected and the process will be upheld, because that's not what we're seeing. And so then you sort of flip to, how can you protect yourself in this moment? I mean, imagine talking to people about who can you trust if you happen to get picked up to take care of your kids? And can you start having a discussion? Can you figure out who that is? And can you start having a discussion with that person or those people and figure out what does your child say, your US citizen child, what do they say? How do they communicate with you? So that we're preparing people that are the living victims of an emergency. An emergency seems to me to be too soft a word for this moment. It really does. I don't know how to describe, because you don't want kids to be wondering every day, is my dad coming home from work? Is my mom coming home from work? So you have to put it in some kind of package, without lying, but some kind of package that a child can understand, that won't make it worse and won't traumatize them to a greater degree, but will give them the information that they know. If sometime you come home and I'm not around, you know who's waiting for you. Go over there. They're waiting for you. We'll be in touch. This is horrific. It is really horrific. I've been doing this for about 50 years. I have never seen, I got indicted. I was looking at life in prison. Not like this. Nothing like this. This is torture. Torture to a segment of our community that carries our economy on their backs. Thank you. Is that the way we say thank you? Huh? So that's where we are. And we're running an initiative campaign to get on the ballot to create a public defender office so that, because my little neighborhood clinic, first, can't do everybody, and second, I need to stop at some point. And so this would create a public defender office that would represent Pima County folks who are put in deportation and they're too poor to hire a lawyer. We have those petitions around. We'd love for you, some of you signed it on the way in. If you can carry it and get a few of your friends registered to vote in Pima County, that would be great. I know that if it's on the ballot, it'll pass. It's just getting it on the ballot. And now these guys are waving their hands, so I think it's time to ask questions. Thank you very much.
Want to stay up there? Okay, if you have questions, raise your hand. We'll bring the mic to you.
Hi, I was just wondering, do you need people to come in and talk to people? Do you need people who are bilingual? Or do you have more than you can?
We never have enough. And one of the things that we're doing now is we've asked people to come and sit with us in the office, because I do believe that we're a target. And so I would like someone else to be the first one that encounters who's come to get everybody out. So that's really important. I mean, hopefully I'm wrong, but I just can't believe that we're not going to be attacked. And that means the staff, that means everybody that's in there, you know, clients that are getting advice and all that kind of stuff. And then we have we have research work on asylums. We have all sorts of things. And we usually, when somebody says they want to volunteer, we say, well, here's 10 things. Of these, which would you like to do? They're all equally important. Myra says, get in touch with her.
Okay.
My question is, you implied that the ICE agents are not being held to any standard, that they are not being directed to respect civil rights. Is that right? And do you think at any point in the future they'll face any legal consequences for that, or will it just all get kind of swept under the rug?
I can't see them facing any legal consequences, because this administration, this comes from the top. You know, I can't see any adverse ramifications for them. I mean, those men that took the grandma in the wheelchair with no papers and threw her daughter face first on a sidewalk and left the baby. You know, I was a public defender for 20 years. There's about 10 felonies right there. They're never going to get charged. If you and I did that to somebody, we'd already be in custody and we'd have a $250,000 bond. Yeah.
Thanks for those stories about what's really happening. Thanks for the stories about what's really happening on the ground. I just had a question about the proposed initiative. Could you go into detail about what the infrastructure of the Public Defender's Office would be in taking those cases? And I'm really curious what kind of feedback you're getting from the Public Defender's Office for that proposal.
Sure. Thank you for asking that. The public defender, it wouldn't be creating a new office. It would, right now, the ordinance in Arizona, not just Pima County, is that anyone charged with a felony who lives in Pima County or was arrested in Pima County and fits an economic scale that they're too poor to hire a lawyer is appointed counsel, because of course the Constitution ensures that no one should stand alone and face criminal charges. So, and sometimes people are close to the cutoff, very close, maybe $10 or something, but they're below it. So then there's a sliding scale. So they have to pay a certain amount. But no one, just because they're too poor to hire a lawyer, is forced to stand alone. It would be the exact same scale but rather than the person being charged with a felony in Pima County, it would be someone who would be put in deportation proceedings in order to appear before a judge. 3%, there was a study that was done at the U of A, I think it was done in 2019, and you mentioned it, almost 65% of the people that had lawyers were able to stay. Their family was able to stay. 3% or 2% people without lawyers were able to stay. So, I mean, whether the PD wants to do it? Oh yeah, when I started this, this is our third cycle, so that would be 5 or 6 years ago. They were really, really excited. Yeah, and the Board of Supervisors is very, very supportive. Yeah.
Many of us are kind of watching the news or not watching the news and drawing the conclusion that there's a pretty well-organized machine operating at the direction of a small group of people to make these things happen. And so that would suggest that the people who are approached by ICE, it can't be totally random. Does anybody have a clue how that system is operating and whether there's any way to interrupt that system?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've also wondered about that since it could, how did it flip so fast? I don't know. I haven't figured that out. I mean, I suppose you could think, well, there's snitches or something like that. But the lady in the wheelchairs, her whole neighborhood is Mexicano Chicano, and nobody's gonna report her, much less a grandmother. Nobody's gonna do that. I don't know. I don't know how they're doing it. I will say that the neighborhoods where they've done these terrible assaults, there have been 3 so far. They've just been like this horrific. They all been in Chicano, Mexicano neighborhoods. But it seems like, that's kind of random if you just go up and take a door and knock it off. One of our guys, they knocked the door down completely, tied the wife up to a paddy wagon. She's a lawful permanent resident. She's also a diabetic, and this happened at 6:30 in the morning, and she didn't have her shot. All the kids are US citizens. Yeah, so you got dad. Dad, he owns his own company. He's entered with inspection. He's been here 25 years. He has no infractions. He paid taxes every year. I'll get him in a hot second to be a lawful permanent resident. Why did you do that? I mean, I don't think there was a basis. I think they just picked that Mexican house or Chicano house. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
I'm sorry, I just want to say one thing, because I didn't even know this when I started working with Justice for All, and tell me if I'm right, Margo, the public defender office, as it exists now, takes criminal cases. But what we're trying to establish are not criminal cases. These people haven't done any crime other than go to work, support their families, and that's the people that this would help.
When I was a public defender, I created a special unit to represent non-citizens charged with serious felonies. And so I trained young lawyers, and I did myself, dealt with the criminal charge, but then also did it in a way that didn't have an adverse consequence on the immigration side. And if we could take care of the criminal matter and also regularize their status, we would do it. The reason it makes sense to me that this be in the public defender's office is that not necessarily they would do that part of the caseload, because criminal public defenders do that, but that it would be in the public defender generally in that office. So whether it's dealing with people who don't have documents, or it's people charged with felonies, some may have maybe citizens or lawful permanent residents, some may have no status. But it's just adding another unit to the public defender.
Are there any more questions? You're all going to have one over here.
I'm wondering who is the boss of Homeland Security and how does ICE fit into that? And so you're saying they're acting with impunity, that they cannot be held accountable. Why?
Well, I think the boss of Homeland Security these days is Donald Trump. Because I think whoever's sitting in that position just takes orders. I don't think they have the authority to decide how to manage the office. And it's just the moment, it's the political moment. You all, I'm sure you've all heard the degradation that's aimed at undocumented people. And that's part of the manipulation of race hate at the moment. You all working class folks, Anglo-Saxon folks, you're really my heroes. It's this brown trash over here that's tearing our country apart. It's that kind of, put people against each other kind of generalization.
I'd like to ask one question. If you could just clarify for all of us.
Sure.
Being undocumented is not a criminal offense. Crossing the border is a civil offense, correct?
Yeah, it's not any kind of illegal offense to be undocumented at all. And it just means you're out of status. And I'll tell you what, there are all sorts of people from countries other than Latin American countries that are out of status that come to our clinic and say, can you help me do this? I've only been out of status for like 2.5 years. What do I do? I mean, if you were a Mexicano, that would be fatal. But because you came from France to go to the U of A for a while and then you overstayed, we can fix that in a hot second.
I heard Christy Noem's deputy of Homeland Security interviewed on PBS and by Amna Navar. And the deputy secretary said that because they were in the country illegally, they were criminals, and therefore the only people who were being deported were criminals. But that's not true. They've decided to make that up on their own. Is that correct?
Yes, because immigration courts are administrative courts. So that's like if you go to workers' comp and you hurt yourself on the job, but the workers' comp judge says you don't meet all the criteria. That doesn't mean you're a criminal. This is just another administrative court.
Okay, there are good questions, and if you want to have more of a personal conversation while we enjoy some refreshments on the other side of the lobby, Karen's made some delectable things. She's awesome. And where's Karen? Yeah, there's Karen. She made some yummy stuff for us to munch on while we're chatting with Margo and Myra and Don there. I'd like to make a comment though. How many people in here have been watching South Park? Believe me, Google it, whatever you have to do to watch it. What we've just been talking about, the second episode, is it. Who is leading this effort? Starts with the puppy killer. And being led around by the nose by Steve Miller. And is Trump just a puppet? So, I'm sorry?
I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me to come today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Margo. Okay, one thing that we are going to do is if you pick up petitions, we're going to start arranging to have petition signing Thursdays over at the Esmond Station Library, like we did last summer in the heat for the abortion petitions. We might wait until it's a little less hot, maybe in the low 90s this time. But we're going to start doing that on Thursday. So anybody who'd like to spend 2 hours at the library once a month, maybe over the next 6-8 months, get in touch. We'll make sure you get petitions. We'll have lunch parties to get them all notarized. We're going to get this on the ballot. Okay, go across the hall and munch away and ask away and find out everything you need to know.
And sign the petition.
And sign the petitions.